Okay, so let's go on. The historical age of enlightenment also represented a global slave economy. Okay, the abolitionist movement, women's natural rights movement, and a multiplicity of revolutions fighting to the death in a struggle for enlightenment. So I like to call the age of enlightenment the age of the struggle for enlightenment. Okay, listen to it again. The historical age of enlightenment also represented a global slave economy. Now, when we talk about a global slave economy, that relates to the prison industrial complex. Because if we look at the prison industrial complex, if we go and look in there, there's a bunch of black people in there that have been arrested for little bits, little minor things that are in there for a long time. But what's the point? It's free labor. They don't have to pay them for working. I had a friend, he told me, man, in there, he said, man, you got to be farming. You got to work to eat, man. Right? It's free labor. They're not just making license plates. It's free labor system. And that's exactly what the Constitution talks about. When they got rid of slavery, they said there will be no more slavery unless convicted of a crime. That's how it reads, okay? So what I'm saying is a slave economy. See what I mean? There's an economy to it. It's a free labor because you don't have to pay. See what I'm saying? So there's a motivation to have an industrial complex. And when you look at it's right up there with Walmart as the number one business, private prisons, okay? So the historical age of enlightenment also represented a global slave economy for its time, right? The abolitionist movement, it represented that. The age of enlightenment also represented the abolitionist movement. It represented women's natural rights movement, because the suffrage movement was going on, because women don't have a place in society either. They're just next to the slaves, okay? And it represented multiple revolutions fighting, you know what I mean? America's got its revolution. Tucson, they got their revolution over there. The French Revolution, they chopping heads. Something's not right. See what I'm saying? I already said in the age of enlightenment, when you got men wearing wigs and more with makeup than women, something is wrong in this story. Something's tilted in this story. Okay, well, we go on. The enlightened age was also a time that included great combinations. The Enlightenment age was also a time that included great contributions from women and people of color whose stories have slipped through the cracks of selective memory, time, literature, and music history books. The modern age that produced Hitler and Nazi doctrines coexisted with an American society harboring its own racism, prejudice, and injustices. But for the New World symphonists, New World symphonists means people that were in that New World Symphony thing where they were really into Negro melodies and putting Negro melodies into art music. It wasn't just Dvorak. And so they were called New World symphonists, composers like Kurt Weill and Edgar Varese. For their composers like that, America continued to represent an ideal and a state of mind that overshadowed even the most flawed realities, okay? European composers were inspired by America, from black hymns and Native American Indian music to the poetry of Walt Whitman, who was an abolitionist, right? And Edgar Allan Poe. From the remote American frontier to the energetic New World cities, composers blended old world sophistication that threw these American influences into new and unexpected directions. Okay? So now that we know Stravinsky's into black music, he's really into funk. We can hear the funk, right? But by the time he gets funk and he's getting jazz, he's hitting the jazz chord, it's not swinging like the black people do it, but it's like something new and unexpected directions. That's what we're talking about here. And in Jack Sullivan's book, New World Symphonies, he gives you all the different examples. They're writing operas about jazz, and like, whoa, right? Okay, so the New World Symphonist composers were inspired by a variety of American influences to create New World art with bold experimentation and creative intensity that established permanent American-inspired changes in classical music. One of them is the New World Symphony that I mentioned by Dvorak that has the hymn that has that hymn right in the middle. I forget which one it was, but when Dvorak got here, he had a student named Harry T. Burleigh that would sing these Negro spirituals, right? And he would just get Dvorak to get his student Burleigh to sing them. And when he heard Go down Moses, Moses, way down Moses in the Egypt land. Tell, O Pharaoh, let my people go. Dvorak said, man, that is as great as any Beethoven melody. And he instructed his students to sing those Negro spirituals on the concert stage next to the arias of Schumann and all the great things. Now, his black students said, we knew the songs were great, but we didn't know it was that great. We would have never done it. We were instructed by Dvorak to do it. My point is, when Dvorak is saying that, he's attacked by black parents and white press. They say, you out of your mind. You out of your mind, right? Because the black parents are telling their kids, we didn't send you to college to come home singing them nigga songs, you know? We didn't, you know, they trying to get them ahead in society. And them songs are still close to the parents. Grandparents still remember that. They're not trying to hear them tunes. So they not coming to the recital, okay? Dvorak is right in the middle. Truth ain't never welcome all the way, right? Now the press is like, you daring to put Negro spirituals on the same stage, concert stage? Are you out of your mind? See what I'm saying? The black parents ain't happy and the white side ain't happy, right? But he's instructing his students on what to do, okay? So I'm trying to draw the tension of the time. Ain't nobody happy. He ain't making nobody happy by saying that, right? You're going to sing Negro spirituals. You know, the parents say, man, we didn't pay all this money to send you to college for you to come home singing these nigga songs. See what I'm saying? Like, ain't nobody happy, right? But he ain't nothing but right. When you listen to the message of Dvorak, and he talks about how the future of music is going to be based off Negro melodies, apply it to popular music and see if he's not right. Okay? Apply that to popular music, any popular music. I don't care what it is. Hip hop, rock, Led Zeppelin, they all in the blues too. You know what I mean? Really, you could, all that rock and music, you just imagine James Brown singing with them. You know what I mean? It's just going to rock even harder. See what I'm saying? My point is, you know, I'm showing the connection between Dvorak's message for popular music. Popular music embraced it. And then some. Classical music plays the popular tune, but maybe didn't embrace it like it was embraced during Dvorak's time. It hadn't like continued that love for black music. Why? Well, look at the classical institution. It's turned down so many. If you were black, you weren't allowed to play in there. You know what I mean? It's like the golf course. Michael Jordan, you good in basketball, but you're not welcome on this golf course, son. You know, I don't care what time it is. This is a private golf course, and you are not welcome. That's true, real talk right there. Okay, so that's what we're talking about, this tension, and this is what's behind the music. And so much so that Ron Carter tells a story. He tells a story about, I think it was one of the meanest composers, Leopold Stokowski or something. He says this cat was mean, man. And he wanted to hire Ron Carter, but he said he couldn't get you in the orchestra because I can't hire you because you're a race. You know, that you could do a whole documentary on how many great black musicians who just weren't allowed in classical music. So classical music has been it represents the racism of the world. You know, it's not because particular racism. It's kind of you on the beach and that's where everybody's going. So they're not letting black people in. And you could just look. If you look at the story of Nina Simone, her neighborhood, black and white, raised money for her to go to Juilliard, right? And then when she was going to go to Curtis, which is super high classical school, they rejected her because she was black and she was female. They said, you need to go to the jazz club and sing your music, you know? And that hurt her for her whole life. When you see the documentary, a little bit before she died, they rectified that and gave her a doctorate. And they made it right towards the end. But that got her, man. People like Eric Dolphy, the dude who wrote Strayhorn with Ellington. He's a classical dude. One of the last things he wrote was a cello concerto before he died, maybe in the hospital. Ron Carter, he was going jazz. I mean, he was going classical. But Stokowski, he said, I can't hire you. You know, you black. You're not welcome here. That's how it was, right? There's so many. Eric Dolphy with John Coltrane, classical dude. See, you could just go on and on and on. That institution of classical music didn't welcome, you know, black musicians. Okay? So we're talking about the New World Symphony's symphonist composers were inspired by all of these influences to create a new world art, right? And the American influence inspired so many changes in classical music, okay? Some composers like Debussy and Delius went in a darker Edgar Allan Poe inspired direction, more towards mystery and ambiguity, while others expressed the blend of American swagger, funkiness, frankness, and New World innocence. You know, we talking Stravinsky now. I heard Stravinsky in the documentary Cold Tour, and I heard him humming the violin parts to the violinist, and he's going. I was like, man, this man is trying to play funk, man. What? Oh, that's what's going on. They would play it back, and it wasn't the funk that he was singing, but I was like, oh. So he like really latched onto that funk thing, man. I was like, oh, and you can hear a lot of his stuff. And he's going for that funk thing, man. So anyway, New World symphonists, right? New World symphonists were the composers that were embracing Negro melodies, slave songs, and spirituals into art music. Very controversial subject, okay? They were blending American styles into their own music and established a certain era of influence that usually had an American writer at the center to inspire their personal music versions of the American myth. So, right, a lot of times it's an opera or something like that. So there's a long history of European classical composers, extreme appreciation for black music. And when the great Bohemian composer Dvorak spoke about the significance of Negro music in America, he insisted on the controversial idea that, quote, these Negro melodies are the folk songs of America, and your composers must turn to them. All of the great musicians have borrowed from the songs of the common people. Beethoven's most charming scherzo is based upon what might now be considered a skillfully handled Negro melody. I have myself gone to the simple, half-forgotten tunes of the Bohemian peasants for hints in my most serious work. Only in this way can a musician express the true sentiment of his people. He gets into touch with the common humanity of his country, unquote. That's Dvorak. He's saying you got to turn to these Negro melodies. Now, what I'm saying is look how classical music half-heartedly maybe kind of turned to it. Look how popular music turned to it. Okay? Look how popular music turned to Negro melodies. Listen to the Rolling Stones talk about the blues. Listen to the Beatles talk about black music. Listen to Bonnie Raitt talk about black music, man. You know, and so forth and so on. You can go on and on and on. I forget, I was just on NPR listening to John Cougar Mellencamp. He just released a new record. He's got a raspy voice. He said he smokes every day. He knows he's going to die of cancer, but it makes his voice sound black. He wants to sound black, right? And he's so proud because now his voice sounds like Louis Armstrong on his new record. And he's like, yeah, man, the dude said, I sound like Satchmo, right? He's smoking a cigarette so he can sound black. Now, you tell me that's not love for black music. That's all I'm saying. See what I'm saying? The way that popular music has embraced Dvorak's message and how has classical music embraced Dvorak's message. They tore his house down. So you know America wasn't down with it. You know, we should be able to go to the house where that man wrote the New World Symphony, which is one of the most popular pieces in classical music. Where that house got torn down, man, and they had raised the money for it too. They can't wait to tear it down, man. Okay, so anyway, this is the thing, you know what I mean? I try to bring the classical music into a place where you can tell what's going on. Okay, so the appreciation of many great classical composers, the classical composers towards black music and black culture has often been met with controversy. When Dvorak came to the U.S., he proclaimed Negro melodies to be great American national folk songs and was astonished to find that American composers were slavishly imitating the European styles. He was astonished. He said, man, you imitating Beethoven and all that when you got all of this here? That's what he said. He was astonished, right, to find that American composers were slavishly imitating the European style, okay? Therefore, he sought for a true American identity, the same way he and many others had already done in Europe, by converting their folk vernacular into high art that would be both formal and accessible. Dvorak said that African American songs had a new harmonic freedom, along with a rhythmic audacity and unlimited emotional range that provided all that was needed for a great and noble school of a new classical music. Right? Has classical music as a whole really embraced that melody? I think that when and if classical music embraces that melody, it will be popular music. Again, like classical music used to be popular music. That's just my take, but this is my podcast too. So the controversy that erupted around Dvorak's American ideas was not his use of American folk music, but his insistence that the black slave songs offered the best vehicle for building a new world tradition. Because he said it wasn't the only vehicle. He loved Indian melodies and some of the hillbilly stuff, Irish kind of sound and stuff. But he said the black music was the strongest. Okay, Dvorak was not the only white artist to be influenced by black music, but he was the first important composer since Louis Gottschalk to embrace the full impact of black music in the classical arena and to fully realize its significance. Okay, so Gottschalk was a guy we're going to come back to, because Gottschalk was playing from New Orleans, and he was mixing all that stuff from New Orleans and putting it in classical music. And when he went to Europe, he just created a storm. He wrote a piece called The Banjo, Le Banjo, and it's got that banjo jump to it. And dude, man, they said people just went crazy over that, right? Anyway, while Dvorak was in New York getting introduced to black music, another European English composer, Frederick Delius, was taking a similar path based on the spirit and shape of African American slave song, all right? So they're basing this art music around what they're hearing in the slave songs, right? Like Dvorak and other New World symphonists, Delius blended Indian and African motifs. Many of the insights in this podcast, many of the insights in my podcast here are outlined in detail in the book New World Symphonies by Jack Sullivan. So in my next podcast, we'll take a closer look at Delius and the impact of New World symphonists. This is Roy Future Man Wooten, and this is my podcast.